my channel. This is Maxwell. Sorry y'all, it's raining in the background. It just threw me off a little bit. But today we're watching the video about TheGroove. I absolutely love their channel and their commentary and their documentaries. And this one is on Janet Jackson. It says The Velvet Rope, revisiting Janet Jackson's most daring and personal album. Let's see what they have to say.
Imagine being one of the most successful, famous, and highest earning celebrities in the world, yet going through a severe depression. This is exactly what was happening to Janet Jackson during the creation of her album, The Velvet Rope. The superstar had a nervous breakdown shortly after negotiating and signing the largest record label contract in history and embarking on a successful album tour in support of her fifth album, Janet. As she struggled with depression brought on by childhood trauma, body dysmorphia, eating disorders, and problems in her still secret marriage, she took some time to gather herself and made the decision to open up about her very private life and explore these topics publicly. The result of this introspective process was a massive album with genre-defying sounds, iconic hits and music videos, and a massive impact on pop and R&B. Although Janet Jackson's solo music career began in 1982 at A&M Records, where the record label was eager to present her at first as a lovely and innocent girl next door, she eventually grew frustrated and made the decision to reinvent herself. She started collaborating with writers and producers Jimmy Jam and Terry Lewis in 1986, giving her music more edge and attitude and helping it become more evocative of her personality. The platinum album Control, with its personal themes of taking the initiative and staying true to oneself, is what came as a result, and it quickly turned her into a pop sensation. By the time The Velvet Rope was released in 1997, she had transformed into a self-assured young lady whose two albums released after Control, 1989's Rhythm Nation and 1993's Janet, established her as an unstoppable force in the music business. The release of the compilation Design of a Decade in 1995 fulfilled Janet Jackson's Virgin Records contract. She renewed her Virgin deal for $80 million after an industry-beating war, eclipsing the then unparalleled $60 million Michael Jackson and Madonna earned with their respective contracts. She managed to obtain such favorable conditions because she was Virgin's best-selling artist and had mastered a dance pop style that had pushed her combined past three album sales over the 30 million mark. But while she had reached what could be seen as the pinnacle of her career, she began facing a long-term case of depression resulting from various forms of trauma she experienced throughout her life. She told Newsweek that her depression began building in her childhood and stemmed not from her family, but rather from humiliating experiences with her teachers. She specifically recalled feeling unaccepted and ostracized for her skin color by a school teacher who would intensely scold her, causing her classmates to erupt in laughter. She had suppressed some of her childhood traumas throughout her teenage years and early adulthood by using evasion tactics to prevent haunting thoughts from resurfacing. But her depression was so intense during the recording of The Velvet Rope that she occasionally broke down into tears in the studio. She also experienced an abusive marriage to recording artist James DeBarge when she was only 16 years old. Though she was still a teenager, he would often make derogatory remarks that would damage her self-esteem, like, "No one is ever going to want you again. You should be happy here with me." Some of her depression was also caused by her experience within the music industry. She questioned her career path as she felt pressured by the demands of the entertainment industry and crushed by the dehumanizing aspect of fame. Channeling the emotions generated by those memories through music would allow her to heal by experiencing catharsis, meaning the purification or purgation of the emotions through art. At the beginning of the album, Janet Jackson explains that the idea of the velvet rope is a metaphor for emotional boundaries as well as an allusion to an individual's need to feel special. She also makes the cathartic purpose of the album explicit in her introductory monologue. We've all driven by premieres or nightclubs, she says, and seen the rope separating those who can enter and those who can't. Well, there's also a velvet rope we have inside us, keeping others from knowing our feelings. In the velvet rope, I'm trying to expose and explore those feelings. I'm inviting you inside my velvet rope. I have a need to feel special, and so do you. We share a burning need to belong. During my life, I've been on both sides of the rope. At times, especially during my childhood, I felt left out and alone. At times, I felt misunderstood. Times when I ran into the backyard to confide in our dogs. Through them, I felt like I was talking to God. But no human heard those feelings expressed. They stayed buried in my past, but the truth has to come out. And for me, the truth takes the form of a song. End quote. The record was co-written and co-produced by Janet Jackson, her then husband Rene Elizondo Jr., Jimmy Jam and Terry Lewis, with additional contributions by various songwriters. Songs on the album also include British violinist Vanessa Mae, Canadian singer-songwriter Joni Mitchell, and American rapper Q-Tip as featured artists. Its composition fuses various genres including pop, R&B, trip-hop, folk, jazz, rock, and electronic music. From the perspective of the listener who may be unaware of this private context, The Velvet Rope accomplished in any case a musical triumph. It's a catchy album with irreplaceable beats and melodies, but it also takes a lot of risks, whether in form or in content, as Janet Jackson addresses depression, solitude, sexuality, domestic violence, identity, as well as the nature and experience of fame. The song You deals with the idea that we all build fictitious versions of ourselves to put on display in public. But in Janet Jackson's eyes, those identities have to be challenged in order for us to know who we truly are. The song is surprisingly introspective and features a trip-hop sound quite removed from mainstream pop and R&B. This exploration out of the comfort zone was to be part of Janet Jackson's therapy. Ignoring pop codes meant to emancipate herself from the character that had been constructed for her to become a star. As a result, we obtain a track list that strikes us by its formal ambition and its level of experimentation. It propels Janet Jackson into places where we would never expect her to be. And what better way to explore one's identity than by being alone? The themes of loneliness and abandonment are explored in multiple songs, but most notably on I Get Lonely. The accompanying music video for the song was directed by Paul Hunter and choreographed by Tina London. The video took a more artistic approach, blending Janet Jackson's trademark sex appeal and choreography with the song's theme of loneliness and isolation. Her new style, with full, vibrant red hair, was praised by critics, as well as the sequencing, alternating between a stylish dance routine, backseat car grooming, and hallway wind machine dramatics. As the song reaches its climax, she starts taking off her clothes, creating a visual experience articulating the tension between emotional pain and search for pleasure. Janet Jackson's music dealing with relationships has always been marked by some level of melancholy. It is possible to see a thread between her previous albums and The Velvet Rope when it comes to the issue of love and relationships by taking a look at the main ballads and slow jams in her discography. While the album Control ended with the song Let's Wait a While, which prompt abstinence, there was no more holding back on Some Days Tonight in her subsequent album Rhythm Nation. A couple of years later, she sings about herself and her lover having public displays of affection on Any Time, Any Place in her self-titled album. The Velvet Rope's Tonight's the Night continues this thread, but the lyrics imply that this time she's about to share a night with a woman. Her interpretation of Rod Stewart's 1976 hit flips the song on its back as a woman is in charge and ready to explore her sexuality beyond the limits posed by heteronormativity. Despite its more or less explicit sexual content, the song paints a picture of sexuality that is elegant and melancholic, in large part because of its focus on the emotional aspect of physical intimacy. The album reinforced Janet Jackson's public image as a sex symbol, but her subversion of codes of heteronormativity is what makes the record stand out in her discography and in 90s mainstream pop music as a whole. In other songs like God Till It's Gone, Janet Jackson turns the personal into the collective thanks to subtle social commentary. Released in MTV's heyday, the music video was steeped in genre-defying visual language. Director Mark Romanek suggested that they recreate an apartheid-era South African dancehall. The imagery evokes portraits by famous male photographers such as Seydou Keita and Malik Sidibé, as well as Cameroonian photographer Samuel Fosso. The video echoes this sense of freedom present in their work while embracing Janet Jackson's African roots and painting a picture of Black South Africans full of dignity and resilience. It is particularly poignant to have Joni Mitchell's rallying cry and lament that you don't know what you've got till it's gone laced throughout the song and video.
Don't it always seem to go? You don't know what you've got till it's gone.
In John Haskell's piece, Laurel Canyon, he claims that Joni Mitchell was a utopian and that, quote, her utopia was a belief in the possibility of turning idealism into something real, which is why her songs about sadness and loss usually have a note of possibility, end quote. Released only 3 years after the end of apartheid in South Africa, God Till It's Gone seems to urge listeners appreciate what they have and find hope and light, even in dark times. Janet Jackson eventually finds hope in what is probably the most iconic song of the entire album. Together Again is a heartwarming tribute to friends lost to HIV/AIDS. For the video, she went to Africa, more specifically in Tanzania, on the Serengeti. The clip is full of animals, and Janet Jackson looks out on the desert with the sun shining through clouds. There is no real indication that the song is about loss. In fact, Together Again, whether sonically or visually, starkly contrasts with the rest of the album by offering a beautiful vision of an African paradise marked by completeness and fulfillment. Loneliness is replaced by togetherness, brokenness by wholeness, and despair by optimism. Critic Tom Brahan explains, quote, Together Again is not a melodramatic work of mourning. Instead, it's a song of optimism and celebration. Janet sings of death as a form of liberation from earthly stresses. In that sentiment, you can hear a lineage at work. Gospel to soul to disco to house. You can hear the yearning for transcendence that's behind so much great music. End quote. Other critics viewed in the song's style a subtle homage to some of her predecessors, namely Diana Ross and Donna Summer, who also created dance music infused with melancholy with her song Last Dance. In hindsight, the creative process imposed by the recording of the album clearly served as therapy. One can definitely hear a form of healing in the music itself, particularly in the way Janet Jackson makes her voice sound and resonate, as well as in the spectacularly enwrapping, almost velvety arrangements that accompany it. 25 years later, it goes without saying that The Velvet Rope can be listened to as an album ahead of its time, both for the themes it explored, many of which were almost unheard of at the time on the R&B market, and for its formal innovations. It can also be understood as a work that announces the alternative R&B that would develop in the 21st century and as a turning point in American pop in general. It also sings that a female and African-American artist had never had the freedom to invent such blockbuster high-tech music. Everything on the album sounds massive, and 1,000 things are happening at the same time, even in moments of calmness and slow jam. The Velvet Rope was probably the most daring and risky project of Janet Jackson's career, and it reminds us that artists are at their very best when they are not afraid to be vulnerable, go down unexplored pathways, and most importantly, stay true to themselves.
That one was so good. Y'all forgive me for like the thunder and like you see the weather is getting real bad. But this was super good. The Velvet Rope is still my favorite Janet Jackson album. Close second would definitely be Rhythm Nation, but something about this album, I don't know what it is, it just resonates with me. I think it is because it's so ahead of its time and the things that it talked about, and just the impact it has had on, you know, a lot of the music we see today. People will never give everybody the credit for anything that they do, but like when people list Janet as the blueprint for what we see today, I think of Rhythm Nation, I think of Janet, I think of Velvet Rope, I think of these three albums together. Like, so distinct, so different, so great, so fresh for that time, but so timeless. Like, you can go back and listen to those songs today and it's just phenomenal. Definitely loved the things and could tell she was going through something with that one, and loved the discussion of catharsis in music, because that's something that you don't always see today. Today it's about getting a hit, and you know, nobody really writes from you know, personal spaces, and if they do, they're not mainstream. Those are, you know, the indie artists that we love that don't get the looks of the bigger artists. But this was really good. This was really good. I don't have many words for it. I just think it was well done. This was a documentary I put in my watch later. I wanted to watch it, and I was like, well, let me just film it, because I know y'all tend to like my points of view on this, but I don't really have much more. And I think Janet Jackson is forever Janet Jackson. The Velvet Rope is my favorite album. I absolutely love Free Zone, What About Us, which we know was about that marriage that they mentioned, and Together Again. My mom tells me all the time I used to sing that song a lot when I was a kid. So definitely, you know, again, we love Janet Jackson. We stand Janet Jackson on this channel. But let me know your thoughts on this below. Comment, like, subscribe. Until next time, peace.